Houdini fly is a kleptoparasite, size of a fruit fly, teeny tiny with red eyes. You can go to YouTube and look at some of the videos so you can be familiar with them. But if you see a little fruit fly looking fly, that's usually a Houdini. Kleptoparasites will wait on the outside for Mama Mason bee to leave, and then that Houdini fly will go into that nesting chamber. Again, you have the mud, pollen, little baby. She'll lay her babies inside that little cell that Mama Mason bee. Now, Mama Mason bee doesn't realize it. She caps it with mud. Well, now she's capped all of these Houdini fly larvae in with her baby, and then her baby is gets killed as well.
From the Oregon State University Extension Service, this is PolliNation, a podcast that tells the stories of researchers, land managers, and people like you who are making bold strides to improve the health of pollinators. I'm your host, Dr. Adoni Melathopoulos, Associate Professor of Pollinator Health in the Department of Horticulture. Okay, folks, we are in the midst of blue orchard bee season, so I thought we should reach out to a professional for some advice on what to do. Thyra Mckelvie is the managing director and solitary bee educator with Rent Mason Bees, which is the largest solitary bee provider in the U.S. I first ran into her through her incredible YouTube channel, which has all sorts of helpful tips on how to manage these bees efficiently and sustainably. As some of you know, managing mason bees has gotten harder here in the Pacific Northwest with the introduction and spread of a new predator of mason bees, the Houdini fly. Thyra walks us through managing the fly and other predators and parasites, as well as all sorts of other tips for how to do mason bees right. So without further ado, let's get some pro tips on keeping mason bees happy and healthy this week on PolliNation. Hey, Thyra, welcome to PolliNation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to come on and teach more people about these sweet little bees.
It would have been great to have you just a couple weeks ago. I know many of us, including myself, we have our blue orchard bees that are flying, but this is a great opportunity just to remind everybody what these bees are and, how to care for them. So I'm so glad to have you here.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes, you're right. It is the end of April, and
Ah!
I know most of the mason bees have already started emerging. Some of those girls are still tucked away. I know we've had some cold weather here and there, and so they like to wait to come out until it's warmer. But yeah, it is mason bee season. We are full on into the mason bee mode. So your bees are coming out as well, right?
Yeah, they're out, but I still see males. There's still males that are around. They're still popping out. So, never too late. But so let
Yeah.
for those, I mean, everybody must know. But blue orchard bees, like, what are they?
Bobs, the blue orchard bee, the bobs.
Bob.
Yes, the bobs. Yes, not a lot of people know what a mason bee is. And so I love to teach, especially I was on an airplane the other day and I asked the lady, she was talking, I was working. She's like, what are those? I'm like, well, they're a mason bee. Do you know what they are? She's like, no, I've never heard of them. So I love that. I love teaching. So she got the spiel on the airplane. So a mason bee, the blue orchard bee, looks like a housefly. They're a green iridescent sheen, but they are Mother Nature's one of their best pollinators because they have little hairs on their body called scopa, and they belly flop, and they collect pollen, and they pollinate 95% of everything they land on. They're remarkable pollinators, and mason bees are a solitary bee. Honeybees are a social bee. So honeybees have the hive and the queen and the drones and the worker bees. They are social. They're having a party. Those mason bees are solitary. She does it all by herself. She finds her own nesting chamber, she gathers her own food, and makes up her nesting chamber. Lays all her own eggs. All
Mhm.
her own eggs. She lay about 15 babies in her lifetime. She does it all by herself. And so she's a remarkable little pollinator. And because she's doing it by herself, she's not aggressive. She doesn't hurt anybody. She's not going to sting. She's not going to fly after you. They're just amazing little bees.
I mean, I do remember, some schools often have bees on property, and they're used to honeybees. And I know
Hmm.
Ron Spendel, one of our master gardeners, has really done a lot with mason bees in the Portland area has gotten them into schools, but sometimes the schools freak out. They think, oh, bees
Yeah.
on campus, but they don't realize how gentle and docile they are.
Good point, because I have been speaking these last few months at master gardener groups and webinars and at schools. And when I go and I speak at the schools, the teachers announce that, the kids are going to learn about, they're going to hold a bee, hold a baby bee. And the parents, they freak out. They're like, what do you mean my kid's allergic? And so holding a baby bee is the way I describe it because I really want kids and master gardeners love this part too. They're just holding a cocoon. So mason bees hibernate in a cocoon all winter long. They grow into a full-grown bee inside that cocoon and then they emerge in spring when temperatures are about 50 degrees. They emerge right away as a full-grown bee. And so people can hold a baby bee in their hands. And so I always have to educate the teachers and send them a message to send out to the parents. So, we're getting the word out about these bees slowly but surely. We're teaching people about these sweet little bees. And here in the Pacific Northwest, they are native. They are the bees that we really need to care for and take care of.
Well, taking care of is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show today. Although they're a little obscure to people, they have made their way into the world. Like you can go to Costco and you can pick something up, a little bee hotel. And so they're out there and people have seen them. And, I just need to bundle some straws together. So there's all sorts of like aware, but I think that people aren't quite,
Mhm.
clear when as I am not when I,
Right,
buy something at a Costco. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to read
right.
the package and away I go. May not be fully aware of the care that's involved. Can you walk us through, like,
Yeah.
what's involved here?
So good point. Those Costco houses were sold a few years ago, and I actually I've opened up some of them, and they're just full of predators. So millions of bee hotels are sold all over the globe. There's never any instructions that go along with them on the proper care and maintenance. So, because we're the largest solitary bee company in the country, we harvest and clean 3 million cocoons. We are the biggest, and we get privilege of working with all these amazing bee labs all across the country. UC Davis, UC Riverside, USDA, Penn State, you name it. We're working with a lot of entomologists and bee labs that are studying the predators. And what we're learning is the nesting material that everyone has these amazing intentions of putting out a bee hotel. I want to support the pollinators. I want to put out a bee hotel. If you're not doing the three most important steps to care for them, you're actually going to be doing more harm than good. And you cannot use nesting material that is made with bamboo or logs with holes drilled in it. And that's what's sold at all of these garden nurseries and all these stores. And bamboo is super glued to the back of these cute little bee houses. Those nesting chambers need to be about 6 inches long and 8 millimeter diameter. And these little houses, you'll find them, they're short, they're small, they're not, the depth isn't the right thing, and you're actually going to be creating a predator habitat because you can't open and clean them in the fall. And so you really want to find nesting material that you can open and clean. So stacking trays, cardboard tubes with liners that you can pull out, reeds, anything that's easy to open and clean in the fall is what you need to put out in your yard. Now, I'll get the pushback all the time about, well, why do I have to clean? In Mother Nature, I don't have to clean. Like Mother Nature's just, I'm gonna let Mother Nature take its course. And I always
Uh,
tell people, well, are you setting out a bee hotel? And they're like, well, yeah, of course. And I'm like, well, that if you're setting out a bee hotel, you're now interrupting Mother Nature. Like you're now part of this problem. And so if you don't want to harvest and clean and take care of your bees, just like honeybees need maintenance, like pollinators need maintenance if you're putting them in your yard. Three simple steps. Clean nesting material out in spring. You're removing them at the end of spring. Mason bee hotels do not stay out year round. Predators, summer predators can get into them. You're going to destroy the little babies inside. And three, the most critical part is you're opening and cleaning everything in the fall. I have step-by-step videos and guides on how to do this yourself. If you want to skip the bee bath, if you want to skip all those things, you just take the cocoons away from predators. Because what happens is inside that nesting material, you'll have pollen mites. Houdini fly is on the rise right now, especially in Oregon. I'm getting a ton of calls right now in Oregon on the Pacific Northwest, and Houdini fly are now on the East Coast. It's a really bad kleptoparasite. Also in there is chalkbrood, mono wasp can get to your bees. So people that think their bee hotel looks healthy because all there's mud plugs, go to my YouTube channel. I have a ton of videos that I've just been doing out with the old, in with the new. I go visit people at their backyards. They say, "Hey, I've got this old bee house. Can you come take a look at it?" And we take a look at it and we open it up and we dissect it and we find like one was completely covered in pollen mites. The other one had nothing viable. All the mud plugs were plugged, nothing viable inside. So it's a huge learning curve for people to realize this, that, and with the bee labs that we're studying and the researchers, they're saying that it takes just 3 years for your mason bee population to be completely wiped out by predators. Houdini fly will lay 300 to 500 babies in their lifetime. Mason bees lay 15. So if you've not cleaned your nesting material and Houdini flies start emerging, there could be 300 to 500, and they'll wipe out your mason bee population. So it's very important to take care of your bees if you're going to be hosting them in your yard.
And it's not that hard. I've watched your videos. I think they're great. It's I love as well how you use dollar store tools.
Hmm.
So it's you don't need, because you also, I think, in some of the videos show how it's done, commercially. Like
Hmm.
nice flaming rigs that kind of like
That's
sterilize.
us.
Yeah,
Well, when you send your bees back to us, we harvest and clean 3 million. So we've invented this Bob harvester that plunks everything out gently and we wash everything. And then, yeah, the fire station sterilizes those nesting blocks because they're empty. You have to get rid of the pollen mites. You can't just, somebody asked me this week, can I just use a wire brush to scrub my trays? No, you can't.
you have
Like,
to burn those
you have
suckers.
to burn them and you don't want to soak if you have hardwood laminates, you don't want to soak them in water
Soak
because
them.
they'll expand.
They'll expand.
So yeah, so I have all these steps online if you want to do it, and if you don't want to do it, you can send them back to us and we'll do it for you. So yeah.
So, but I do, the videos are great because it's kind of like a little cooking show.
Yeah.
You got everything laid out, and it's not that hard. I think that's the
Mm-mm.
thing, is when people hear, I'm going to clean my bees, they think, oh my God, this is going to take
Mm-mm.
a whole weekend. It's
Nope.
not. It's going to take you with a couple blocks. You'll be
Hmm.
done in an hour.
Yeah, you'll be done. And people have block parties. Everybody comes over with they'll all come and clean their bees together. We have lots of gardeners. I have pictures of over the early spring, people hadn't opened their nesting material up. I'm like, look, if you're in, March, April, you haven't opened it, you can still, there's still time. Save your bees, open everything up, pluck out the cocoons. You can see them. Like there, you'll open up your stuff, you'll see the pollen mites. Just take out the cocoons and put
Hmm.
them aside. You don't have time to give them a bath when it's that late in the spring. Harvest time is in the fall. You want to do it in
Yeah.
October or November. But what you're doing is when that mason bee chews out of that cocoon to emerge, and it has to crawl through the pollen mites to get out. All those pollen mites stick to the back of the mason bee, get sprinkled. You don't want pollen mites all over your yard, but that's what happens. That's how the pollen mites survive, is they stick to the mason bee's back, fly out. Houdini fly, they lay their babies, kleptoparasite. She waits for mama mason bee to leave. Then she goes into that nesting chamber and lays her babies inside that nesting chamber. They emerge in spring with the mason bees. So you can save them. I have all these videos. Rescue your bees. Go in and rescue them now because you can. You have the power because you are putting out nesting material that you can go in there and take care of them as well.
Maybe let's talk quickly about you've mentioned them quickly, like Houdini fly and pollen mites and wasps. Lay out like the dirty half dozen,
Sure.
the
Sure.
top ones.
Yeah, the top ones. Well, let's describe first what a mason bee nesting chamber looks like
Oh yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
that's what the predators go after, right? So when you have a nesting bee hotel out, hopefully you're using healthy nesting material. If you haven't, we'll talk a little bit about what you can do because I know mason bees are already out right now. But what a mason bee does is she gathers mud in your yard, in your garden. Please don't use slug bait or pesticides because that mud goes right next to a baby, so you don't want that seeping into the ground. She'll crawl into that hole with that mud. She'll cap the very back with mud. She'll go out and she'll collect that loose pollen all over her belly, and she'll go in and she'll make a pollen loaf. Then she'll lay a teeny tiny egg on top of the pollen loaf, back out, get more mud, she'll cap it with mud. So inside there'll be a mud, pollen, baby, mud, mud, pollen, baby, mud, all the way to the end. She leaves about a half an inch gap between the last nesting chamber and where she plugs it at the end. That saves the babies from any birds plucking them out. And then when you see a mud plug on the end, that you know there's a row of babies inside. So what happens? So pollen mites, let's talk about those first. So those flowers have pollen mites. The mason bees don't know. They come into the nesting chamber. She's making her mud. She's making her pollen, getting them all off. Well, she's depositing little microscopic mites that you don't even realize that are there. And those pollen mites multiply rapidly. I have tons of videos, close-ups, macro lens. They're kind of creepy crawly, but then they multiply rapidly in that cell. So you have mud, pollen, baby, a bunch of pollen mites, and mud. Well, they will take over that entire nesting chamber and kill the developing bee. They'll multiply rapidly. They'll seep into all your other crevices within your nesting block or your tube or along the line, and they spread rapidly. So they're really, really bad. Houdini fly is a kleptoparasite size of a fruit fly, teeny tiny with red eyes. You can go to YouTube and look at some of the videos so you can be familiar with them. But if you see a little fruit fly looking fly, that's usually a Houdini. Kleptoparasites will wait on the outside for Mama Mason bee to leave, and then that Houdini fly will go into that nesting chamber. Again, you have the mud, pollen, little baby. She'll lay her babies inside that little cell, that Mama Mason bee. Now, Mama Mason bee doesn't realize it. She caps it with mud. Well, now she's capped all of these Houdini fly larvae in with her baby, and then her baby gets killed as well. Now, these suckers are bad because, like I said earlier, they'll lay 300 to 500 babies and they will wipe out. Like we've opened up, they will wipe out your mason bees because there will be nothing left because they're very prevalent. There's a lot of flies. Something interesting that I just learned this week about Houdini, they came from Europe. They were brought over here by Europe. They are now on the West Coast and the East Coast. We are partnering with UC Davis with Abigail and now Penn State with Natalie Boyle. And I asked them, I said, well, how are these so damaging? Like, what's Europe? Europe has to be doing something about this. What are their tricks? Because we're trying to figure out traps and ways of getting rid of the Houdini. Very interesting. In Europe, though, that species of mason bee in Europe fights the Houdini. It knows that it's a predator, so it rips it to shreds. So those mason bees attack anything that comes near its nest, it attacks it. But our sweet little mason bees here, in the United States, they don't have those skills yet. They don't know that that's a predator. So you literally can see a mason bee coming out of the hole, a Houdini fly sitting right there. I'm sure mason bee's aware of it, but that Houdini fly just goes right in. And so we need to train our bees to fight off these Houdini fly. They're really, really bad. So that's the Houdini fly. And then Chalkbrood is a spore. It's a fungus that is also on your flowers. And Mama Mason doesn't know that as she's collecting pollen for her baby and making a pollen loaf, she's accidentally collected this little tiny fungus spore called Chalkbrood. That little tiny larva starts eating that pollen loaf. It ingests the spore, and what it looks like is it dries it up. It turns it black. And then if you don't harvest and clean, that black larva will burst, and all those millions of spores will sit in your nesting chamber. And again, the bee will crawl through, it'll stick on them, and it spreads in your yard. And then the final predator are your summer predators, the monowasps. So this is why we want you to remove your nesting material at the end of spring, because mason bees only live 6 to 8 weeks. Nesting material does not stay out all year round. You're removing them, just store them in a garage or shed. They don't need to be temperature controlled. You're just getting them out of the summer elements. So monowasps are another kleptoparasite, but she relies on full cocoons. So she's summertime. So by the summertime, your bees have spun their silk cocoon. I have a 3-part series on my YouTube channel, What Are Your Baby Bees Doing? Where I open it up and I show you it's quick
Oh, great.
how quick they spin those silk cocoons. And so this monowasp has these sensors. Now, well, we can show you a picture down below. We can link all this stuff. but it's not a stinger on this monowasp. It's this long ovipositor. And she goes usually onto cardboard tubes because she can get through those a lot easier than a stacking tray. But she'll crawl in and she'll feel the vibration of there's a cocoon and she'll poke her ovipositor through your cardboard tube and into the cocoon and lay her babies inside that cocoon. Well, of course, it's going to kill the mason bee, and then those are going to emerge again in summertime to keep that life cycle going. So, so many important things that you can really do when you're hosting these little, everybody loves their mason bees. So let's love on them more and care for them more. If you want them returning year after year, you're going to have to step up and you're going to have to start doing maintenance for your mason bees. Easy, easy to do. Like you said, get a work party, open up your nesting material, use the right nesting material so that you can open it. So,
All right, let's go through those. So the
yeah,
first thing is starting clean, having clean nesting material, and of course, when you're starting for the first time, it's clean.
yes, yes,
But
clean.
then it doesn't. It gets mites, and so you were talking about how you do it when if somebody is giving you their bees, and we'll talk about that at the end what the service is. But if you're doing it yourself, you've got these, I guess, reeds. You can just
Hmm.
discard them,
Crack them. Yep.
crack them, and they're gone. But if you're going to be reusing material, there is this risk of carrying those chalkbrood spores. The mites are going to be alive and crawling all over things. So what do you do? How do you
Yeah.
clean them?
Yeah. So if you're using stacking trays, I find those are really easy. You could just open them up very easily, clean
I
them
use
out.
them too. They're
You,
so easy.
they're so easy.
Yeah.
So, and they're usually wood laminates. We don't want you to use plastic. We're getting reports right now that a lot of people are wanting to make 3D models of, well, there's chemicals in that plastic. And so we're learning from our research teams that don't use plastic, don't use that kind of material. These 3D machines are cool, but not for mason bees. So stacking trays, you easily open them up and you clean them out. I have video where you scrape everything out. You've got the mud, the pollen mites, all the debris, you have the cocoons, you set those aside. And then in your stacking tray, you're going to need to sterilize that because you're going to reuse it. You get to reuse that stacking tray. Don't soak it in water. If it's a wood laminate, it'll absorb any chemicals and it will expand. Just use a flame. Now, this is a great excuse for you to get your blow torch out, stick it on the concrete pavement, and not long because you don't want to catch it on fire, but just very quickly blast it with that flame. That'll kill chalkbrood, pollen mites, all of that. Houdini fly you can spot and will remove 100% of Houdini fly when you open. You can see them. They're these tiny little white maggot looking things. They're disgusting, sticky. You'll see curly frass, which is the Houdini fly poop. It's frass. It's like this curly brown stuff. That's Houdini fly. 100% can remove those. If you have cardboard tubes, usually your cardboard tubes have liners, so you can easily pull out the liners. Now, a trick that I do with my cardboard tubes and my liners is you can pre-slice your liners with like a razor blade all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom. Pre-slice them and then just put them back in the tube, in the cardboard tube.
So
Now,
when
when
you're
you pull them out, yeah, easy. Then you don't have to worry about cutting any cocoons in the fall when you're cleaning. So that's a little trick. So you're not going to use those liners anymore, but you're going to use the cardboard tubes, but they're going to be clean because the liner's going to keep them clean. Then you
yeah.
just replace the cardboard tubes with clean liners every spring. Reeds you can't reuse, but reeds you just crack open everything up, and then you put out clean reeds or whatever. So every spring, clean stuff out at the beginning of spring.
Okay, so we've got everything's clean, and now we release our bees, and
Hmm.
our bees are flying. I guess you can't do anything at that point. Things are going to find their way into the nest. They're going to be pulling things in from the environment. There's nothing as a responsible mason bee person you can't swat Houdini flies, or you're kind of.
Well, yes, you can. People are vacuuming them up right now. We're having infestation reports everywhere. So people have these little tiny handheld high volume vacuum cleaners and they're going around sucking up the Houdini fly. So yeah, we're actually
Is that a
with
fool's errand, or are
yeah,
you?
no, I'm serious. People do it, and
Does it work?
it works. Yeah,
Okay.
people are catching them. It's working. The other thing that's working is Tanglefoot. You put that on the base of a tree so the ants don't crawl up your fruit trees. Well, you can line your bee hotel with Tanglefoot, and mason bees usually don't rest on their bee house. They just are going into the holes nesting. The Houdini fly rest on your house because they're waiting for the
Oh, good
mason
time.
bees to
Okay.
leave.
Yeah.
So it's a little trick. If any of your listeners are having a big Houdini fly outbreak right now, I would love for them to email me at info@rentmasonbees.com. We are looking for volunteers to set up some of our research bait traps at sites that are having high reports of Houdini. We are setting up cages to release mason bees with Houdini to study them, but we want to try some traps, and we have a couple different concoctions of bait that we want to see what works. With this grant that we got with in partnership with UC Davis, we're putting on a full frontal. We're trying to get out there and figure out how to get rid of these bees. So we're attacking them as best as we can. So yeah, if there's anybody who wants to be a part of that, don't put the Tanglefoot up, don't do your own traps, email me, and then we'll send you some bait traps to see what works and what doesn't work.
Okay, fantastic. So the bees are doing their thing, and maybe you might be able to vacuum or Tanglefoot up your
Yeah.
Houdini fly, but you're by for all intent and purpose, they're going to finish plug up their nest by the end of May, beginning of June, and then you were
hmm
saying they need to be moved. Tell us
Yeah,
more about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so let me talk about that, but let me say when because I meant to say this, but I got sidetracked. When your bees are emerging in early spring, the boys always emerge first, and they have that white tuft of hair on their head. You can identify them, and they mark their tube or wherever they're emerging from with scent mark. They fly out, but the girls won't come out for about 1 to 2 weeks later, and then they fly off. They're gonna not start nesting until they're fertilized, and then they'll start nesting. So I'm getting a lot of people end of April right now. Where are my bees? I haven't seen them. Where did they go? And so that's what happens is they don't start merging and then start nesting right away. When they're out in your habitat waiting to get fertilized, they might find nooks and crannies in your yard, which is great.
That's a really good point because I do think you're like, oh, are they,
Yeah.
are they working? And then you see a plug, and then there's lots of plugs, and then like, oh my God, I need more boxes.
Right. Yes. Yes. You want to swap out because once they're plugged, yeah, so once everything's plugged at the end of spring, you're going to gently remove that nesting block. Now, there might be plugs in there, there might not be plugs. It's okay. A lot of people say, well, it looks empty, but when you look at it in deep, when we open these up at the shop, there's bees in the way back. So that mama mason bee may not have finished all the way to the front. Something may have happened to her, something, who knows? But there's bees. There might be bees in there. And so, yeah, you're just going to store that nesting block in a cool garage or shed until fall time, until you start harvesting and cleaning in the fall. And while they're there, they're going to develop and grow into a full-grown bee over
You know,
summertime.
I've always wondered. I'm just your average Joe Mason bee raiser, and I often think I often worry in the back of my head if I put it in too cool a spot, it would slow their development time. There's not as long as it's not going in a fridge. Like if it goes into
Right.
a basement or something, and it's a little bit cool. They're still going to finish their development okay.
Right. They'll be fine.
Okay,
They'll be
good.
fine. Yeah. Yeah. You're really just getting them out of summer elements. You want them away from mono wasp. And, the longer they're sitting outside, the more you're going to get ants and earwigs and birds and everything else that might want those baby bees in there. They're done. They live 6 to 8 weeks. They're done. So grab them and save them from anything that's going to be getting them for the next 3 months in the summertime or two
Here's
months.
here's the other one. Let's say it's a hot garden shed, like it's a little plastic, tough, whatever, and it's
hmm
south facing. They'll be okay in there too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want them too hot. They don't
Yeah,
do well. So when we have mason bee hosts like in hot states, Arizona,
yeah,
California, we send them their bees like end of February, early March, because mason bees like 50 to 85. They don't like hot weather. So we also don't want to cook any of the developing
yeah.
larvae.
Okay,
But in nature, they're out there in the summertime in
that's true.
the summer elements. So they're going to
Mhm.
be okay. But it's just another way that you can protect them. If you're going to be hands-on with your bees, just stick them in a cool garage or shed. Some people wrap them up in a mesh bag. I went to the fabric stores, picked up some tulle, like super cheap. I think it was $1 for like super, super cheap. So you don't really need to wrap them. I never do.
Mhm.
I don't wrap mine, but a
I
lot of
can't imagine
people,
a little mono wasp like, getting the garage door opener and
right.
coming in and then closing it and
No, they won't. They won't find it. They don't, you have it in your garage. They're not going
Yeah.
to come into your home. But
Okay.
if it's in your garden, they'll come out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
O- Okay. So we've done that and they're developing. And so then you're saying when do we clean?
Yes, good question. So we want to clean, we do our fall harvest the first week of October. So you're welcome to come. It's mind blowing to see the process. Again, we have videos on our YouTube channel to show you how we harvest and clean. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, you extract everything out of the nesting material, you open it all up, you get everything out, and then you get this bin of yucky stuff, the predators, the mud, the cocoons that we love that are nice and healthy. But then we rinse them in a very, very mild bleach solution. And I have, again, step-by-step videos on how to do this. That mild bleach removes any remaining pollen mites and chalkbrood spores, and it kills all of that. It does not hurt the bee. Those cocoons are waterproof. And then we take them onto this tiny little tumbler. We turn this cherry picking machine into a cocoon washing machine. So fresh, clean water sprays it. They tumble, they get rinsed off. We put them down on this big drying tray overnight. They dry. And then we take that big tray out and we hand sort through 3 million mason bee cocoons. Now that takes us well into winter time. The
Mhm.
harvest is where we get everything out and we extract everything, and then the fire station is where we're sterilizing the nesting blocks. So, but when you do it at home on a smaller scale, similar but on a smaller scale.
All right. On the smaller scale, like I
Yeah.
got a question about this. So I was cleaning and I
Hmm.
had bad chalk brood and I was worried about picking those things up. I thought, because sometimes you pick them up with a tweezer and
Poof.
poof. So
Yep.
like what's the best way to get those out while I'm cleaning? I kind of didn't want them to touch anything else. I was really nervous, but
Yeah. Well, the bleach bath will kill any of the spores from the
okay.
chalkbrood. That's what we've learned. And if you have a whole nesting chamber of chalkbrood, you can just hand pick out your cocoons if you want, if you don't want to touch them. But then you're going to definitely want to sterilize the nesting material. And here's the other thing that's super huge. Do not throw Houdini fly larvae, chalkbrood, all of that into your yard waste bin, because now you're spreading them to other places when the yard waste gets picked up. So have a nice bonfire, have a burn pile, or put them in a Ziploc bag and
Bonfire.
freeze them,
Yeah.
whatever you can do. But Abigail said at UC Davis, you can take any Houdini fly larvae that you find, stick it in a Ziploc bag, and pop it in your freezer for a week, and that will kill them. So yes, don't throw them in the yard waste bin or dispose of them somewhere in your backwoods. Now, when I was releasing I get back because I teach a lot, so people were switching from old nesting material to new, so they gave me all their old stuff. I said, I'll take it. I'll do a video about how to release bees. So this could probably be relevant to the listening audience right now that have old nesting material that they're using, the bad stuff, the logs with holes drilled or the bamboo. You're not gonna, you try your best to open up your bamboo. You can crack it like a Dungeness crab, crack it with a cracker or a nutcracker. Try to get into there in the fall.
Yeah.
If you can't, I have this video where I take all this old nesting material, I stick it in a plastic bin.
Hmm.
It's clear so I can see it, not in the sunshine. In the springtime, you just put all that nesting material in a bin. The bees emerge, you open up the lid, let them fly out, and then put the lid back on. You don't want them using
Oh,
it. So that's a trick. However,
okay.
when I was doing that with some houses on the YouTube channel, it's why the
Like
head.
once a day.
Yeah, you go out there and check on them.
Yeah.
You'll see
Okay.
there once the sun and warms up, that whole box will be full of mason bees. But when I was doing this, this from this old nesting material, I saw when I opened it, they were all of them covered in pollen mites. I was like, crap. I don't have it in the heart. I
Oh,
don't have it in my heart to kill them. So I took them way, way, way far away deep into my woods
uh,
and I let them out there. I didn't want them on my flowers. I have so
yeah.
many flowers in my yard. I didn't want more pollen mites to be spread in my yard. So it is something if you do see pollen mites on them, then just release them somewhere else because I didn't have it in my heart. And
Well,
then burn all that nesting
I
material.
suppose you don't want to be in that situation to begin with. So like,
No.
but if you got your logs and you might have this 1 year transition where you might have this like problem,
Yeah.
but then you'll be into regular clean nesting material and you will never ever go back that way. Good. Okay.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, no, pollen mites will still linger around. Those are kind of hard to 100% eradicate, but the way you eradicate them is in the fall, you'll be able to help your bees not crawl. So when the bees crawl through the pollen mites, That's how they're being spread. So you can avoid that. And then, yeah, lessen the pollen mites in your yard year after year.
Okay. All right. So that's, I suppose, I have worked with some commercial vineyards. Maybe some of them are listening, and they actually use rent mason bee to.
Hmm.
It's great because they're busy. They're running a vineyard. They
Yep.
want to have mason bees on site. They often have fruit trees, but they just have too many things, too many irons in the fire. So how does this work? What's if
How does the
somebody,
rental part work?
yeah, if you want to rent them and you don't want to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
outright.
I know renting is so confusing. People are like, what am I renting a bee? That's the other question I get. You're not really renting the bee. In our Mason bee starter kits, you get the black shelter house, you get a clean sterilized nesting block. It's a stacking tray, and you get a bag of clay because I need that clean mud for their babies. And we give you a pack of Mason bee flower seeds that have all their favorite foods that you can plant for the next season. And then your cocoons that are clean are in a PVC pipe. It's the white PVC pipe with a hole at the end. We cover the hole with a piece of tape and we send you 50 cocoons. We send you your Mason bee starter kit. And if you choose to rent from us, you will get if you want us to clean, you'll get a return label in your shipping box that you then just send that nesting block back to us in September. We collect tr so many boxes come back in September. It's great. We just sit there, we return bees, and we sort all the bees by the region, right? So we are OBA certified, Orchard Bee Association. We're certified. So we have to follow regulations and guidelines on how we ship bees and what we do with them and how we sort them and what species goes to what area. So yeah, so if you want the part where we clean, you send it back. If you clean, you just keep it, watch my videos, and you can get your bee party. And I always host a bee block party at the end of the season for all our hosts at Watts Brewery in Woodinville. It's a really fun event that we do every September.
Fantastic. Well, this is really great and it's timely. And I think everybody out there, especially if you've been like hearing about Houdini fly and you're
Yeah.
freaked out, here's some tips. I think this is a great episode for you to kind of take your mason bees under control again and really give them a good life because they're going to do a lot of work for you in your
Yes.
garden.
Yes, they're going to give you back so much. They're going to make you more fruit. They're going to make everything healthier around you. And then, like I always say to people, like, you're just going to become more attached in your garden. You're going to see these little bees and you're going to watch them and they're not going to bother you. You can stand right next to their bee hotel and watch them go in and out and enjoy them.
It's addictive.
It is addictive. I always get so sad when Mason bee season's over. I've done videos about, are you missing your bees? And it's the compilation of all my favorite bee videos all in one. If you're missing your bees, watch this. And I always send it out when it's winter time and it's dead of snow. I was like, this is coming soon. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time, a
Yes.
very busy time of year to talk to us.
It's perfect. The more people I can teach, the better. So I appreciate you letting me come on and teach. So thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Show notes with links from each episode are available at the website pollinationpodcast.oregonstate.edu. I also love hearing from you, and there's a form at the website where you can pop in and say hello and give me feedback. If you want to support the show, remember to leave a rating on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever podcast mothership you use. And finally, if you have the means and you want to help support my lab's effort to document bee biodiversity in Oregon, visit OregonBeeAtlas.org and follow down to the donate button where you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Jerry and Judith Paul Native Pollinator Endowment. Every little bit helps. See you next episode.